The frosted glass door swung open, and Marcus Cole found himself staring at the half-dressed CEO of Heart Technologies. She froze. He froze. 40 pounds of equipment crashed to the marble floor. In that single heartbeat, everything he'd built 6 years of sacrifice, every promise to his daughter, every bill he'd scraped together to pay, hung by a thread, thinner than the silk strap sliding off Elena Hart's shoulder. She could destroy him with one phone call. Fire him before the sun rose. Leave his little girl without a father who could feed her. But what Elena Hart did next, that's where this story truly begins. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The flickering fluorescent light in Marcus Cole's bathroom had been dying for 3 weeks. He knew exactly what was wrong with it. Could fix it in 15 minutes with a $5 ballast from the hardware store. He'd rewired half the buildings in downtown Chicago. This should have been nothing. But every time he looked at that stuttering light at 4:47 in the morning, he saw another bill he couldn't pay. Another promise to Lily he'd have to break. Another small defeat in a war he'd been losing since he was 26 years old. Marcus splashed cold water on his face and stared at the stranger in the mirror. 32. He looked 45. The lines around his eyes told stories he wished he could forget. His hands, calloused, scarred, never quite clean, no matter how hard he scrubbed, mapped every job he'd worked to keep a roof over their heads. Behind him, through paper-thin walls, he could hear Lily breathing. That soft rhythm was the only music that mattered anymore. His phone buzzed at 5:03 a.m. Marcus's stomach dropped before he even looked at the screen. Early calls were never good news. Early calls meant emergencies. Emergencies meant opportunities, but also risks. Cole. His supervisor's voice was strained. "I need you on the executive floor. Security system malfunction. CEO's private wing." Marcus's hand tightened around the phone. The executive floor. 55 stories above the basement, where he spent his days invisible among servers and wiring. He'd been up there exactly twice in 4 years. Both times to fix something urgent, while the executives were safely away at meetings. The unwritten rule was simple. Be invisible. Be fast. Don't make eye contact. "Can't Jensen take it?" Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. "I've got to drop Lily at D. Jensen's handling a breach in the parking structure. Williams called in sick. You're the only one with security clearance who's answering their phone." Tom's voice softened. "I know it's early. I know you've got the kid. But this came from the top. The CEO herself requested immediate response." Elena Hart. Even her name carried weight that made the phone feel heavier. Everyone at Heart Technologies knew the stories. 29 years old. Took over 2 years ago when her father collapsed from a heart attack during a board meeting. The business world had placed bets on how fast she'd fail. Instead, she'd gutted the old guard, acquired 4 competitors, and tripled the company's cybersecurity contracts. Forbes put her on their cover. The Wall Street Journal called her a prodigy. The employees called her the Iron Lady. And they didn't mean it as a compliment. Marcus had seen her exactly once crossing the lobby like a force of nature in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of his rent. She hadn't looked left or right, hadn't acknowledged the people who stepped aside to let her pass. Her face had been beautiful in a way that seemed deliberately weaponized. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing. Auburn hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She'd terrified him from 50 feet away. "Fine," Marcus said. "I'll be there in 30. 25. The email said urgent. Marcus ended the call and stood motionless in his cramped bathroom. The dying light flickered overhead like a warning he should have heeded. Lily's room smelled like strawberry shampoo and the lavender fabric softener Mrs. Chen used on her blankets. Marcus knelt beside her narrow bed, careful not to wake her. She clutched the stuffed rabbit he'd found at Goodwill for her 4th birthday, missing one eye now worn thin from love. "I'll be back to pick you up, sweet girl," he whispered. I promise." How many promises had he made in this room? How many had he actually kept? He left a note for Mrs. Chen next door, who watched Lily most mornings in exchange for Marcus fixing her leaking pipes and broken cabinets. It was a fragile arrangement, held together by favors and desperation. The bus ride took 22 minutes through streets still dark with pre-dawn shadows. Marcus watched Chicago wake up through streaked windows, delivery trucks unloading coffee shops flickering to life, other people stumbling toward their own obligations and compromises. He wondered how many of them felt like they were drowning too, just trying to keep their heads above water one more day. Hart Tower rose 63 stories into the gray Chicago sky, all steel and glass, a monument to ambition that seemed to mock everyone who entered through the service entrance. Marcus swiped his maintenance badge and took the freight elevator, watching the numbers climb with a sense of dread tightening around his chest. Basement levels, ground floor. The numbers kept rising, carrying him away from everything familiar. The executive floor at 5:38 a.m. was silent, in a way that felt almost sacred. The kind of quiet that only existed in spaces where powerful people made decisions that changed thousands of lives without ever seeing the faces affected. Marcus's work boots echoed on marble floors so polished he could see his reflection, a ghost in navy blue, carrying a tool bag that looked shabby against all this luxury. He found the security panel behind a door that blended seamlessly into the wall. Brass letters read, "Authorized personnel only." He was authorized. Technically. The problem was obvious once he opened the panel. Corrupted firmware in the main controller. Someone had tried to update the system remotely and botched it. 20 minutes of work, maybe less. Marcus pulled out his laptop connected to the diagnostic port and started rebuilding the security protocols. His fingers moved automatically, muscle memory from years of fixing things other people broke. He was almost finished when he heard it. A voice. Female. Sharp with frustration. "Finally! What took so long?" Marcus's hands froze over the keyboard. He'd assumed the floor would be empty, that he'd have the place to himself. "Just needed to rebuild the security protocols, ma'am." He called back, keeping his voice professional. "Everything should be functional now. I'll run a quick diagnostic on the sensors to verify." "Do it quickly. I have a press conference in 3 hours and I need to change." Marcus moved through the reception area, testing motion sensors as he went. Each one responded perfectly, green lights, confirming functionality. The CEO's suite had 3 main areas: reception, conference room, private office. 2 doors stood open. The third, frosted glass that turned everything behind it to soft shadows, was closed. One more sensor. Right next to that frosted glass door. Master control for the entire suite. Marcus reached for it without thinking. It was instinct. A technician's reflex after 4 years of checking, testing, verifying. His hand found the panel, ran the diagnostic, and then the door. He needed to test the door sensor. His fingers closed around the handle. Pushed. The frosted glass swung inward. Elena Hart stood in the center of her office, frozen mid-motion, pulling a cream blouse from a garment bag. She wore a black skirt. Nothing else above the waist, except a bra so delicate it barely existed. Her auburn hair was down, falling in waves across bare shoulders. Her dark eyes went wide with shock that mirrored the horror flooding through Marcus's entire body. For one endless second, neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. Then Marcus's tool bag slipped from his shoulder and crashed to the floor. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "I'm so sorry. I was testing the sensors. I didn't know you were. I didn't mean, get out." Her voice was ice over steel. Quiet. Absolutely lethal. "I'm sorry." Marcus backed away so fast he nearly tripped over his own equipment. His face burned, his heart hammered against his ribs. "The door, I thought it was empty. I was just checking the system. I'm so sorry." "Turn around." The command stopped him mid-retreat. Marcus spun instantly, facing the frosted glass, seeing nothing but blurred shapes and his own panicked reflection. Behind him, he heard fabric rustling. A zipper. The sharp click of buttons. Every muscle in his body locked rigid. He waited for the explosion. The rage. The inevitable consequences of the worst mistake of his professional life. He'd walked in on Elena Hart half-dressed, the CEO, the Iron Lady, the woman who could end his career with a single phone call. "I swear I didn't see anything," he said to the glass, his voice cracking. "I swear I was just doing my job, testing the sensors. I didn't know you were here. Please, I have a daughter. She's 6. I need this job. I can't—" "Stop talking." Marcus's jaw snapped shut. The silence stretched. Seconds became eternities. He could hear his own breathing, ragged and panicked, and beneath it, the soft sounds of Elena getting dressed. When she finally spoke again, her voice was controlled, but something underneath it, something he couldn't quite identify. "What's your name?" "Marcus Cole, IT Security Maintenance. I've worked here 4 years. I've never had a complaint. I swear this was an accident. I heard you the first time." A pause. Longer than comfortable. "You can turn around now." Marcus turned slowly, keeping his eyes fixed on the floor. He couldn't look at her. Didn't deserve to. Elena Hart stood behind her desk, fully dressed now in the cream blouse and black skirt. Her hair was pulled back in that severe style he recognized. She looked every inch the CEO again, all traces of vulnerability erased. But her eyes studied him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Look at me," she said. It was the hardest thing Marcus had ever done. Meeting Elena Hart's gaze felt like staring into a searchlight, but he forced himself to do it. She deserved that much. An acknowledgement of what he'd done, an acceptance of whatever judgment she was about to deliver. "You really didn't know I was here?" It wasn't a question. "No, ma'am. The work order just said security system malfunction. I fixed the controller and I was testing all the sensors. I thought the whole floor was empty this early." His hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists at his sides. "I understand if you need to fire me. I understand. I don't have any excuse. I just want you to know it was an accident. I would never—" "Stop." He stopped. Elena walked around her desk, each step deliberate, controlled. She stopped 3 feet away from him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle that made the air between them feel charged. "You're terrified," she observed. "Yes, ma'am." "Of me or of losing your job?" "Both." The truth fell out before he could stop it. "Mostly the job. I have a daughter. She's 6. I'm all she has. I can't—" His voice cracked. He forced himself to breathe. "I can't afford to lose this." Something shifted in Elena's expression. Recognition, maybe. Like she'd seen something in his desperation that resonated with her own hidden truths. She studied him for a long moment. "The door was unlocked," she said finally. "I should have secured it. That's on me, not you." Marcus blinked, certain he'd heard wrong. "Ma'am, you were doing your job, testing the security system. I was careless." She turned away, moving back to her desk with that same controlled grace. "What you saw stays between us. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I would never say anything to anyone. I swear." "Good." Elena picked up a tablet from her desk, her attention already shifting to whatever waited in her schedule. "Finish your diagnostic and get out. Send your supervisor a report that everything's functioning normally." Marcus stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. She wasn't firing him. She wasn't even yelling at him. He'd braced for disaster and found something he didn't have a name for. "Ma'am?" The word came out before he could stop it. "I really am sorry." Elena looked up from her tablet, and for just a second her mask slipped. What he saw underneath wasn't anger, wasn't ice, wasn't any of the things he'd expected. It was exhaustion. Bone-deep weariness that recognized itself in another person. "I know you are," she said quietly. "Now go." Marcus grabbed his equipment and fled. He finished the diagnostic with shaking hands, documented everything on his tablet, and made it to the elevator before his knees gave out. He leaned against the cold metal wall, his heart still racing, trying to understand what had just happened. She'd let him go. She'd seen his terror, heard his desperation about his daughter, and chosen mercy over punishment. Why? The question followed him all the way back to the basement, through the morning's remaining work orders, through the mechanical routine of fixing broken things while his mind spun in circles. At 3:15 p.m., he picked up Lily from school. Listened to her excited chatter about the art project she'd made, a family picture with just two stick figures, Daddy and Lily, standing under a lopsided sun. He helped with her homework, heated up pasta for dinner, read her favorite book until she fell asleep. Normal things, safe things, the rhythm of their life together. But underneath it all, he kept seeing Elena Hart's face in that moment when her mask slipped. Kept hearing the quiet acknowledgement in her voice when she'd said, "I know you are." 2 days passed. Marcus reported for his shifts, kept his head down, tried to convince himself the incident was behind him. Then on Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message from HR. "Marcus Cole, please report to Human Resources immediately. Suite 400. His stomach dropped through the floor. This was it. They'd decided to fire him after all. Wanted to do it officially with paperwork and witnesses and all the corporate formality that made destroying someone's life feel clean and professional. He should have known the reprieve was temporary. The HR director's name was Patricia Chen, no relation to his neighbor. She was all business in a gray suit, a folder open on the conference table between them. "Mr. Cole, please sit down." Marcus sat. His hands gripped his knees. "If this is about Monday morning, I can explain. This isn't disciplinary." Patricia slid a document across the table. "This is a position transfer." The words didn't make sense. Marcus stared at the paper, trying to force his brain to understand. "Effective immediately, you're being reassigned from basement IT maintenance to executive floor technical support. It's a permanent position with a significant salary increase and enhanced benefits package." Marcus's vision blurred. The numbers on the page swam before his eyes. "I don't understand." The position was created specifically based on a recommendation from Ms. Hart herself. Patricia consulted her notes. She indicated that the executive floor requires dedicated technical support with, and I'm quoting here, "demonstrated discretion and reliability under pressure." "Ms. Hart recommended me." "That's correct. The salary is detailed on page 2. You'll also receive health insurance that covers dependents, which I understand is relevant given your daughter." Patricia's professional demeanor softened slightly. "This is a good opportunity, Mr. Cole. Better hours, better benefits, direct exposure to company leadership. If you perform well, it could open doors." Marcus looked down at the numbers again. The salary was almost double what he currently made. The health insurance would cover Lily's dental work, the procedure they'd been putting off for months because he couldn't afford it. The hours meant he could drop her off at school every morning and pick her up every afternoon. It was everything he needed. Everything he'd been drowning for lack of. And it came from Elena Hart. "I don't understand why," he said quietly. "After what happened, Ms. Hart's recommendations don't require explanation." Patricia's tone was final. "Do you accept the position or not?" What choice did he have? What choice had he ever had? "Yes," Marcus said. "I accept." But that night, after Lily was asleep, he sat at their tiny kitchen table and stared at the paperwork until his coffee went cold. The salary increase alone would change everything. He could pay rent on time, fix the bathroom light, buy Lily new shoes instead of praying the old ones lasted another month. Maybe even take her somewhere, a zoo, a museum, anywhere beyond their cramped apartment and the same 3 blocks she knew by heart. But why? Elena Hart had every reason to want him gone. He'd seen her at her most vulnerable, stripped of the armor she wore to face the world. By every logical calculation, she should have wanted him as far away as possible. Instead, she'd promoted him, brought him closer, demonstrated discretion. That's what Patricia had said. That's what Elena valued. Not his technical skills, those were common enough. She valued his silence, his terror, his understanding that some secrets were worth protecting. She needed someone who wouldn't talk, someone who'd proven himself capable of keeping his mouth shut when it mattered most. And maybe, just maybe, she'd seen something else too. The raw need in his voice when he'd begged for his job. The mention of his daughter. The visible evidence that he was holding his life together with desperation and duct tape. Maybe that had touched something in the Iron Lady's carefully controlled world. Or maybe Marcus was romanticizing an act of pure pragmatism. Either way, Monday morning would come. And with it, a new life on the executive floor, working in daily proximity to a woman who terrified and confused him in equal measure. He went to bed, but didn't sleep. Instead, he lay in the darkness, listening to Lily breathe, wondering what exactly he'd agreed to when he signed those papers. The old fluorescent light in the bathroom finally died completely that night. But for once, Marcus didn't see it as another failure. Another thing he couldn't afford to fix. He saw it as a sign that something was ending. And something else, something he couldn't yet name, was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Marcus stood outside Hart Tower at 6:45 a.m., watching his reflection waver in the glass facade. The new badge felt heavy in his pocket, a small piece of plastic that somehow represented the distance between who he'd been last week and who he was supposed to become today. He'd dropped Lily at school early, endured her questions about why he looked so nervous, promised her pizza Friday night to celebrate his new position. She'd hugged him extra tight before running to join her friends, and the warmth of that small body against his chest was the only thing keeping him from turning around and walking away. The executive floor at 7:00 a.m. hummed with controlled energy. Assistants arranging schedules, junior executives clutching coffee like lifelines, the soft ping of elevator arrivals delivering the day's first wave of ambition. Marcus felt immediately out of place. A maintenance worker in navy blue surrounded by tailored suits and clicking heels. The reception desk curved along one wall, all blonde wood and embedded screens. The woman behind it looked up as he approached. "Marcus Cole," he said, showing his new badge. "Executive Floor Technical Support. I'm supposed to report here." "Yes, we've been expecting you." She tapped something on her screen. "I'm Jennifer. You'll coordinate primarily through me. Ms. Hart's executive assistant will brief you on protocols shortly. She's just finishing the morning briefing." Marcus perched on the edge of a chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Around him, the executive floor continued its choreographed dance. People moved with purpose, conversations happening in low tones that suggested everything discussed was confidential and crucial. And somewhere beyond it all, behind doors, he couldn't see, Elena Hart was beginning her day. "Mr. Cole." Marcus stood quickly, nearly knocking over his equipment bag. The woman who'd spoken was in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed in charcoal gray, with eyes that assessed him in a single glance. "I'm Amanda Chen, Ms. Hart's executive assistant. Follow me." She moved like someone who'd learned to navigate these hallways in her sleep. Marcus followed, acutely aware of how his work boots sounded against marble compared to her nearly silent heels. They passed through the main executive area, into a corridor he recognized from his emergency call, the path to Elena's private wing. His pulse quickened despite himself. Amanda stopped at a small office he hadn't noticed during his first visit, tucked discreetly near the security panel. "This is your workspace," she said. "You'll maintain all technical systems on this floor with priority given to Ms. Hart's immediate area. Response time for her requests is 10 minutes maximum. All other issues within the hour. She handed him a tablet. This links to building management. You'll receive work orders here along with Ms. Hart's schedule so you can plan maintenance around her commitments. Amanda's eyes held his. That schedule is confidential. You don't discuss it with anyone. Not other staff, not your friends, not your family. Understood. Understood. Ms. Hart values 3 things above all else. Amanda's voice was matter-of-fact, delivering information he needed to survive. Discretion, efficiency, invisibility. Your work should be seamless. She shouldn't have to think about whether the systems function. If she notices you at all, it should be because you've solved a problem before it became her problem. The irony of being told to remain invisible by the woman whose boss had personally promoted him wasn't lost on Marcus. He kept his expression neutral. Questions. 1,000. None he could actually voice. No, ma'am. Good. Staff briefing every morning at 6:45 in the main conference room. Start your systems check at 7:30. Ms. Hart arrives between 8:00 and 8:30, and everything should be perfect before she walks through that door. Amanda paused. Something in her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Ms. Hart doesn't make recommendations lightly, Mr. Cole. She saw something in you that made her believe you belong up here. Her voice dropped. I suggest you prove her right. Before Marcus could respond, Amanda was gone. He stood alone in his new office, surrounded by the trappings of a life he'd never imagined, wondering what exactly Elena Hart had seen. The first week passed in a blur of learning protocols and staying out of sight. Marcus memorized every circuit, every server, every security checkpoint. He discovered the executive floor had more technology packed into a single level than the rest of the building combined: smart glass that adjusted for light levels, climate controls that responded to occupancy sensors, conference room systems that cost more than luxury cars. He attended the morning briefings, learned to decode Amanda's careful language. Ms. Hart requires uninterrupted focus time, meant keep the entire wing silent. Board members visiting from New York meant everything needed to be perfect to the point of obsession. Press conference in the main auditorium meant Elena would be on edge, her standards impossibly high. And through it all, Marcus caught only glimpses of her. A flash of auburn hair as she strode past, her voice carrying through a conference room door crisp with authority. Once he was replacing a malfunctioning access panel when she emerged from a meeting, and their eyes met for half a second before she looked away and continued walking. She gave no sign of recognition. No acknowledgement that he existed beyond his function as the person who kept her world running smoothly. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like standing in a room where all the air had been sucked out. Marcus told himself it was better this way. Professional. Clean. He was here to do a job, collect a paycheck that was transforming his daughter's life, and maintain the discretion Elena valued so highly. That moment in her office when he'd seen vulnerability crack through her armor was an aberration. A mistake they were both pretending had never happened. But late at night, lying awake in his apartment that suddenly felt less cramped thanks to the breathing room in his budget, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the question that had haunted him since he signed those papers. Why had she really promoted him? The answer began to reveal itself on his 8th day. It was late afternoon, almost 6:00 p.m., and the executive floor was emptying. Marcus was in the main conference room troubleshooting a video system that had glitched during a morning presentation. The technology was sophisticated. The manual read like a foreign language, but he'd spent 2 hours breaking down each component until he found the faulty processor. He was on his back under the conference table, rewiring connections, when he heard voices approaching. I don't care what legal says. Elena's voice cut through the air like a blade. We're not settling. Morrison knew exactly what he was doing when he violated that non-compete. Elena, the optics alone. A male voice, older, trying for reason. The optics of backing down are worse. We set a precedent here. Every executive we've ever signed walks away thinking they can steal our clients and we'll just negotiate a settlement. Heels clicked closer. "Schedule the deposition. I want him on record." They entered the conference room. Marcus froze under the table. He could see expensive shoes, Elena's black heels, a man's polished Oxfords. The door closed with a soft click. "You're being unreasonably aggressive about this," the man said. Marcus recognized the voice now. Richard Chen, one of the senior board members. Old money. Old power. He'd been with Hart Technologies since before Elena was born. Aggressive. Elena's tone could have frozen steel. "Is that what we're calling it when a woman protects her company's interests?" "I'm calling it what it is. Thomas Morrison was your father's hire. Going after him publicly damages your father's legacy." "My father's legacy is secured by this company's success, not by protecting executives who betray us." "Or are you suggesting," Richard continued, his voice silkier now, "that I should prioritize sentiment over strategy?" "I'm suggesting you remember that some of us have been with this company since before you were born. Your father trusted Thomas. Perhaps you should consider whether your judgment—" "My judgment has tripled our contracts in 2 years." Elena cut him off. "My judgment acquired Nexus and Citadel when everyone said we were overextending. My judgment—" She stopped abruptly. "Is someone in here?" Marcus's heart stopped. He'd been so still, barely breathing, but somehow she'd sensed him. "The maintenance technician, I believe," Richard said. Marcus could hear the disdain in his voice. "Perhaps you should have him escorted out before we continue discussing confidential matters." Silence stretched for 3 beats of Marcus's racing heart. "Cole," Elena said. Not a question, a statement. Marcus slid out from under the table, tool bag in hand, his face burning. "I'm sorry. I was fixing the video system. I didn't mean to intrude on—" "Did you hear our conversation?" Richard demanded. "I heard voices," Marcus said carefully. He met Elena's eyes, despite every instinct screaming at him to look away. "I didn't listen." It was a distinction without a difference, and they all knew it. Richard's expression said he expected immediate dismissal. But Elena just studied Marcus with that same unreadable intensity he'd seen in her office. "Finish your work," she said quietly. "Then leave." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus turned back to the video system with shaking hands. He worked as quickly as possible, hyper-aware of the conversation continuing in lower tones behind him. When he finally packed his equipment and headed for the door, Richard was mid-sentence about shareholder concerns. Neither acknowledged Marcus's departure. He made it to his office and leaned against the closed door, pulse hammering. The smart thing would be to go home. Forget what he'd heard. Never mention it to anyone. Discretion. That's what Elena valued. But the look in her eyes when she'd realized he was there, that hadn't been anger. It had been calculation. Like she was testing him. Measuring him against some standard he didn't understand. Marcus stayed late running diagnostics on systems that didn't need checking, unable to shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Around 8:00 p.m., when the executive floor was dark except for emergency lighting, his tablet pinged with a message from Elena's private email, sent directly to his work account. "Your discretion is noted and appreciated. EH. 7 words. No explanation. No context." But Marcus stared at them until his eyes blurred, trying to decode the meaning underneath. She'd watched him overhear a confidential conversation and choose silence, and she'd acknowledged it. The message felt like a door opening, or maybe a trap being set. He couldn't tell which, and the uncertainty kept him awake long after he made it home to his quiet apartment and his sleeping daughter. The following week, Elena requested him by name for the first time. The work order came through his tablet at 2:37 p.m. Climate control malfunction in CEO office. Immediate response required. Marcus grabbed his equipment and made it to Elena's wing in under 8 minutes. Amanda intercepted him at the entrance. "She's been in back-to-back video conferences for 3 hours, Amanda said quietly. "The AC cut out 40 minutes ago. The room's becoming uncomfortable." Fix it quickly and quietly. Elena's office door was open. He could hear her voice as he approached, crisp and controlled despite what had to be stifling heat. I understand your concerns about the timeline, David. What I need you to understand is that the board won't approve additional delays. We launch in 6 weeks regardless of... Marcus slipped inside, keeping to the perimeter, making himself as invisible as possible. The temperature was indeed uncomfortable. At least 78 degrees and climbing. Elena sat behind her desk facing a wall of screens showing various video conference participants. She didn't acknowledge his presence, but he saw her shoulders relax fractionally. The thermostat was mounted behind a hidden panel. Marcus opened it silently and ran diagnostics. The problem was obvious, a failed sensor sending incorrect readings to the climate system. He had a replacement in his bag. Always carried extras of the most common failure points. We've been over this, Elena said to the screens. Marketing doesn't drive the launch schedule. Product readiness does. If your team can't deliver the campaign materials by week 4, we'll find someone who can. Marcus worked in absolute silence, replacing the sensor, recalibrating the system. Cool air began flowing through the vents within minutes. He allowed himself a glance toward Elena. She was watching him in the reflection of her darkened screen, her eyes tracking his movements even as she verbally dismantled someone's excuses. Much better, she said into the conference call. Now that we can all think clearly, let's discuss realistic deliverables. It wasn't about the temperature. She was talking to him, acknowledging the fix without breaking focus. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Recognition between two professionals who understood their roles. He packed his equipment and left as quietly as he'd entered. 10 minutes later, another message appeared on his tablet. Efficient work. Thank you. 3 days after that, she asked for him again. A malfunctioning outlet in her private conference room discovered 15 minutes before a meeting with potential investors. Marcus replaced it in under 10 minutes, while Elena reviewed presentation materials at the table, her presence a constant weight in his peripheral vision. Then again, a flickering light above her desk that she said disrupted her focus during late-night work sessions. A coffee maker in her private kitchen that refused to function. A door sensor that kept triggering false alarms. Small things, easily fixed. But each request came directly from her, bypassing the normal work order system. And each one felt like another layer of something being built between them. Marcus began to understand the real reason she'd promoted him. It wasn't just about his discretion regarding what had happened in her office. It was about reliability. Elena Hart had built her entire life around control, and she needed someone in her immediate environment who could solve problems efficiently without requiring management or explanation. She needed someone who understood what she needed before she had to ask. He started anticipating issues. Noticed when the temperature in her wing fluctuated and adjusted it before she felt the change. Identified a pattern in the lighting system that caused a brief flicker every third day and replaced the faulty component. Kept spare parts for every system she used regularly, stored in his office for immediate access. And slowly, incrementally, the Iron Lady began to thaw in his presence. It started with simple acknowledgments. A nod when he arrived to fix something. A quiet thank you when he left. Then actual words beyond professional courtesy. "You're here early," she said one morning when he arrived to replace a faulty smoke detector before her first meeting. "Wanted to finish before your 8:30. Marcus replied, keeping his tone neutral. "Amanda mentioned you have investors. You read the briefings?" It wasn't a question, but he heard approval underneath. "Helps me plan my work around your schedule." Elena had been reviewing something on her tablet, but she looked up at that. Studied him with those dark eyes that still made his pulse quicken. "Most people on my staff do the minimum required, nothing more." She tilted her head. "Why don't you—" The question caught him off guard. Marcus secured the new smoke detector before answering, giving himself time to choose his words. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "She deserves better than minimum effort." This job, what you did for me, giving me this position, it changed our lives. Seemed like the least I could do was earn it. Something flickered across Elena's face, too quick to identify. Your daughter. She's 6. Yes, ma'am, Lily. The name felt intimate somehow, personal in a way that made him hesitate. But Elena was watching him expectantly. She's in 1st grade, loves art, hates math homework, wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. Just the 2 of you. Just us. Marcus concentrated on testing the smoke detector, not meeting her eyes. Her mother left before she was born. It's been me and Lily against the world ever since. Elena was quiet for a moment. That must be difficult. It's everything. The words came out more raw than he intended. He glanced at her, found her expression unreadable. What about you? He asked before he could stop himself. Is there... He stopped, realizing too late he was crossing a line. But Elena smiled. A small, sad curve of her lips that transformed her face for just a second. No one, she said. Building an empire doesn't leave much time for personal entanglements, and most people want something from me. Power connections, proximity to success. Her voice dropped. It becomes difficult to know what's real. The honesty startled him. This was vulnerability, genuine, and offered freely, and Marcus didn't know what to do with it. I can't imagine what that's like, he said quietly, never being able to trust people's intentions. Can't you? Elena's eyes held his. You trusted your daughter's mother. She left. Now you raise Lily alone, working yourself to exhaustion to provide for her. I'd imagine trust is complicated for you too. She was right. The recognition settled between them. An understanding neither of them had expected to find here in her office at 7:15 in the morning, while he stood on a ladder testing a smoke detector. I should finish this, Marcus said, his voice rough. Yes, Elena agreed. But she didn't leave. She stayed there working on her tablet while he completed the installation. And her presence felt less like surveillance and more like companionship. When he climbed down and packed his tools, she looked up one more time. Thank you, Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his first name. The sound of it in her voice rewired something in his brain, created a connection he wasn't sure he wanted and definitely didn't know how to handle. Anytime, Ms. Hart. He left before he could say something stupid, but he felt her watching him all the way to the door. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Marcus arrived early, checked systems, attended briefings, anticipated problems before they became problems, and increasingly, Elena found reasons to interact with him directly. The projection system in conference room B keeps dropping signal during presentations, she said one afternoon, appearing in his office doorway without warning. Marcus looked up from his laptop, startled by her proximity. She rarely came to his office, usually summoned him to wherever she needed him. I can take a look now if you're free to show me when it happens. I have a call in 15 minutes, but afterward, I'll come to you. Elena nodded, didn't leave. Her fingers drummed against the doorframe in an uncharacteristic display of restlessness. There's a board meeting tomorrow, she said. Richard Chen is pushing for a review of my first 2 years, trying to suggest my leadership has been aggressive and divisive. Marcus set down his laptop. Is that what he said in the conference room when I was under the table? Elena's lips curved. You said you didn't listen. I said I didn't listen. I didn't say I was deaf. A surprised laugh escaped her. The sound was so unexpected, so human, that Marcus felt his chest tighten. Richard has been with this company for 32 years, Elena said. He was my father's closest advisor. He believes he should be running things, that I'm just a placeholder until someone more qualified can take over. Are you? Am I what? A placeholder. Elena's expression hardened. I've tripled our contracts, acquired 2 competitors, increased employee compensation by 18% across the board. But Richard sees a 29-year-old woman in her father's chair, and he can't accept that I belong here. Then prove him wrong. That's what I've been doing, every day, every decision. Her voice carried an edge of exhaustion. But it's never enough. There's always another challenge, another test, another man who thinks he knows better. Marcus stood, crossed to the doorway where she stood, close enough that he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, the tension in her jaw. You asked me once why I do more than the minimum, he said quietly. You want to know the real answer? Elena waited. Because I know what it's like to have people look at you and see everything you're not. To work twice as hard just to be taken half as seriously. To know that one mistake will define you while everyone else gets second chances. He held her gaze. I'm a single father with a GED working maintenance in a building full of MBAs. I know exactly what it's like to have to prove yourself every single day. And I know you're not a placeholder, Ms. Hart. You're the real thing. Richard Chen is just too stubborn to admit he's afraid of you. Elena stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her eyes, surprise maybe, or recognition. You don't talk like a maintenance worker, she said softly. I wasn't always a maintenance worker. What were you? Someone with plans, dreams, a scholarship to Northwestern for electrical engineering. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then Lily's mother left and I had a choice. Chase what I wanted or take care of what I had. It wasn't really a choice at all. You gave up your future for your daughter. I gave up one future, built a different one. He stepped back, putting professional distance between them. Your call's in 10 minutes. I'll check the conference room after. Elena didn't move. Her eyes searched his face like she was looking for something she'd lost. You make it sound simple, she said. Choosing what matters. It is simple, not easy, but simple. How do you know the difference? Easy is doing what everyone expects. Simple is knowing what you can live with. Elena absorbed that. Then abruptly she straightened. The CEO mask slid back into place. Conference room B, after my call. Yes, ma'am. She turned and walked away. But at the end of the corridor she paused, looked back. Marcus? Yes. Thank you. For... She stopped. Started again. For talking to me like I'm a person, not a position. Before he could respond, she was gone. The board meeting happened the next day. Marcus wasn't present, of course. He was in his office monitoring systems when his tablet pinged with an emergency alert, power fluctuation in the main boardroom. He grabbed his equipment and moved quickly through corridors that were unusually tense. Assistants huddled in small groups, speaking in whispers. Something was happening. The boardroom doors were closed. He could hear raised voices inside, Richard Chen's measured baritone, Elena's sharp responses, the murmur of other board members. Marcus checked the power panel outside the room. The fluctuation was minor, easily corrected, but it gave him a reason to be nearby. The door opened suddenly. Richard Chen strode out, his face flushed with barely contained anger. He nearly collided with Marcus. Watch where you're standing, Richard snapped. Apologies, sir. Power issue. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're the one she promoted, the maintenance worker who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Just doing my job, sir. I'm sure you are. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Enjoy it while it lasts. Leadership at this company is about to change. He walked away without waiting for a response. Marcus watched him go, something cold settling in his chest. Inside the boardroom, other members were filing out. Their expressions were mixed, some relieved, some uncomfortable, a few looking openly concerned. Elena was last. She stood at the head of the table gathering papers, her back to the door. Ms. Hart. Marcus stepped inside. Power's been stabilized. She didn't turn around. Close the door. He did. The silence stretched between them. When Elena finally faced him, her composure was cracked. Not broken, she was too controlled for that, but he could see the fractures. Richard called for a vote of confidence, she said flatly. Tried to convince the board I'm too young, too aggressive, too emotional to lead. What happened? I won, 8-4. Her laugh was bitter. Barely. After everything I've done, after tripling our value in 2 years, I barely survived a vote called by a man whose biggest contribution is showing up to meetings. But you survived. This time. Elena sank into her chair, exhaustion suddenly visible in every line of her body. He'll try again. Every setback, every challenge, he'll use it to chip away at my authority until there's nothing left. Marcus moved closer, stopped on the opposite side of the table. Can I tell you something? Elena looked up. When Lily was 3, she got pneumonia. I couldn't afford to miss work, couldn't afford the hospital bills, couldn't afford any of it. I sat in that emergency room at 2 a.m. thinking, this is it. This is where it all falls apart. He pulled out a chair, sat across from her. But it didn't fall apart. Lily got better. I found a way to pay the bills. And the next crisis came, and the one after that, and somehow I'm still here. She's still here. We're still standing. Elena's eyes glistened. You're telling me to keep fighting? I'm telling you that people like Richard, people who've had everything handed to them their whole lives, they don't understand what it means to actually fight for something. They push because they've never been pushed back. They threaten because they've never been truly threatened. Marcus leaned forward. But you know what it's like to have everything on the line. You know what it costs to refuse to break. That's why you're going to win in the end. Because you're not playing their game. You're playing yours. A tear escaped down Elena's cheek. She wiped it away impatiently. I don't know why I keep talking to you like this. Because I'm safe, Marcus said simply. I don't want anything from you except for you to be okay. Everyone wants something. Not everyone. Elena studied him across the table. The CEO and the maintenance worker. The impossible distance between them somehow shrinking with every honest word. My father used to say that power is lonely, she said quietly. That the higher you climb, the fewer people you can trust. I thought he was being dramatic. Was he? No. Her voice cracked. He was preparing me. I just didn't want to listen. Marcus stood, walked around the table, stopped beside her chair. You're not alone, he said. Not completely, not anymore. Elena looked up at him, vulnerability naked on her face for the second time since he'd known her. You shouldn't say things like that to your boss. Probably not. It's inappropriate, unprofessional. Almost definitely. I should fire you just for, but you won't. The words hung between them. Challenge and confession, and something neither of them was ready to name. Elena rose slowly. They were standing close now, too close for professional distance. Her perfume filled his senses, subtle, expensive, intoxicating. No, she whispered. I won't. His tablet buzzed, shattering the moment. Amanda's voice through the intercom. Ms. Hart, your 400 is here. Elena stepped back, composure sliding into place like armor. Thank you for fixing the power issue, Mr. Cole. Anytime, Ms. Hart. But as he left the boardroom, she called after him. Marcus? He turned. Same time tomorrow, for the conference room projector. Yes, ma'am. Her smile was small. Real. A secret shared between them. Good. He walked back to his office, heart pounding, knowing that something had fundamentally changed between them. The invisible man was becoming visible, and the Iron Lady was beginning to trust. 3 weeks had passed since that moment in the boardroom. 3 weeks of stolen conversations and lingering glances. 3 weeks of Marcus finding reasons to be near Elena's office, and Elena finding reasons to need him there. Neither acknowledged what was growing between them. Neither could afford to. But everyone noticed. Amanda started scheduling his maintenance work around Elena's most stressful meetings, as if his presence had become a form of executive support. Jennifer at reception began greeting him by name, her smile knowing. Even the security guards had stopped asking for his badge. He belonged here now, whether he wanted to admit it or not. The day everything changed started ordinarily enough. Marcus arrived at 6:30 for the morning briefing. Amanda ran through the schedule with her usual precision. Product launch today at 4:00 p.m. in the main auditorium. 300 attendees, press, investors, senior staff. Ms. Hart will announce the new cybersecurity platform. There will be cameras everywhere. She looked around the room at the assembled staff. This is the most important presentation of the year. Everything needs to be perfect. No exceptions. No excuses. Marcus made notes on his tablet. The auditorium was technically outside his jurisdiction, but he'd been coordinating with facilities for a week. Elena would be under intense scrutiny. The last thing she needed was a technical failure, making her look unprepared. The morning proceeded smoothly. He handled routine maintenance, responded to a minor network glitch in the finance director's office, and replaced a faulty sensor in conference room B, the one Elena had asked about. Small tasks. Safe tasks. The rhythm of invisible work. Around 2:00 p.m., he decided to check the auditorium personally, just to verify everything the facilities team had reported, just to make sure nothing could go wrong. The main auditorium seated 300 people and featured a professional stage with state-of-the-art lighting, video screens, and sound systems. The facilities team had done excellent work. Everything looked pristine. Marcus was about to leave when something made him look up at the lighting rig. Years of maintenance work had trained his eyes to spot irregularities, subtle misalignments that suggested problems waiting to happen. One of the stage lights looked off-center, its mounting bracket slightly twisted. He found a ladder and climbed up to inspect it. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The safety cable, the backup that prevented lights from falling if the main mount failed, was frayed nearly through. Not from age or wear. The damage was too clean, too deliberate. Someone had cut through most of the strands, leaving just enough intact that it wouldn't be immediately obvious. And the main mounting bolt was loose, turned back several threads, held in place by friction alone. Marcus's hands shook as he examined the setup. This wasn't accident or neglect. This was sabotage. The light weighed at least 40 pounds. If it fell during the presentation directly onto the stage where Elena would be standing, he didn't let himself finish the thought. Working quickly, he secured the mounting bolt properly, tested the weight distribution, replaced the safety cable entirely with a new one from his equipment bag. Then he checked every other light in the rig. 2 more had loosened bolts. He secured them all. By the time he finished, he'd been in the auditorium for 90 minutes. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His mind raced through implications he didn't want to face. Someone had tried to rig that light to fall. Someone inside the building with access to equipment and schedules and enough knowledge of the technical systems to make it look like an accident. Someone wanted Elena Hart dead. The question burning in his mind was whether to report this, tell Amanda, tell security. If this was deliberate sabotage, there were protocols, investigations, potential danger to Elena that extended beyond one rigged light. But he had no proof beyond his professional judgment. The frayed cable could theoretically be explained as wear. The loose bolts might be attributed to poor maintenance by the facilities team. And if he was wrong, if he raised alarms that led nowhere, he'd look paranoid or attention-seeking. Worse, he'd put himself directly in Elena's line of sight in a way that violated everything she valued about him. She needed him invisible, solving problems quietly, not creating drama. Marcus made his decision. He documented everything with photos on his tablet, secured all the systems, made a note to check them again before the presentation. Then he went back to the executive floor and tried to act like his heart wasn't racing. At 3:30, Amanda sent a message asking him to verify video feeds in the auditorium one final time. Marcus went back down, checked the lights again, still secure, confirmed all systems operational. People were already filling the seats. Press photographers set up cameras. The energy in the room built like a gathering storm. Elena arrived at 3:55 flanked by Amanda and two senior executives. She wore a deep blue suit that commanded attention. Her auburn hair was pulled back severely. Her expression calm and confident, the mask of a CEO who owned every room she entered. Their eyes met across the auditorium. Elena's gaze held his for just a moment. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement maybe, or his imagination. Then she turned her attention to her notes and Marcus forced himself to breathe. He positioned himself near the lighting controls at the back of the auditorium. The safest place to monitor everything. The best vantage point to spot problems. The presentation began. Elena commanded the stage brilliantly. Her voice carried through the sound system with perfect clarity. She outlined the new cybersecurity platform with precision-fielded questions from journalists with sharp intelligence, demonstrated technology that would change the industry. Marcus watched, not the presentation, the equipment. The stage lights held steady. The video screens displayed perfectly. Everything worked exactly as it should. He started to relax. Maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe the damage he'd found was just neglect after all. Coincidence and poor maintenance rather than malicious intent. Maybe. Then the light directly above center stage shifted. It was subtle, a slight rotation on its mount. But Marcus saw it immediately. His blood turned to ice. Someone was in the lighting catwalk above the stage. He could see movement in the shadows, a figure adjusting something he couldn't quite make out. Marcus moved before thinking. He raced toward the stage access stairs on the far side of the auditorium. The stairs were too far. Elena was directly under that light, still speaking, completely unaware of the danger gathering above her. The light shifted again, rotated further. Someone was actively working to override his repairs. Marcus abandoned stealth and ran. His boots pounded against the auditorium floor. People in the audience turned to stare. Security guards started moving, confused by the commotion. He saw Amanda's startled face, saw Elena pause mid-sentence, her eyes finding him in the crowd. "Get away from center stage," Marcus shouted. "Now!" Elena froze. Years of control kept her rooted to the spot, confusion and authority warring on her face. The light above her groaned, metal straining against metal. Marcus didn't have time to explain. He launched himself onto the stage, grabbed Elena around the waist, and threw both of them sideways with every ounce of strength he possessed. They hit the stage floor hard. Marcus twisted to take the impact on his shoulder, cradling Elena against his chest. Half a second later, 40 pounds of metal and glass crashed into the exact spot where she'd been standing. The mounting bracket finally gave way. The light exploded on impact. Shattered glass sprayed across the stage. Sparks flew from severed electrical connections. The crowd erupted in chaos, screaming, people running, security converging from all directions. But Marcus only registered Elena. Her body pressed against his, her heart hammering so hard he could feel it through their clothes. Her dark eyes wide with shock. She was shaking. "Are you hurt?" Marcus demanded. His hands moved over her shoulders, her arms checking for injuries. "Did the glass hit you?" "I'm fine." Elena's voice trembled. How did you know?" "I'll explain later. Right now we need to—" Security surrounded them, pulling them apart. Voices shouting questions and orders. Marcus caught a glimpse of figures fleeing from the catwalk access. Saw guards racing after them. Amanda appeared, her professional composure cracked with genuine terror. She helped Elena to her feet. "I'm fine," Elena said again, louder now, authority returning to her voice even as her hands shook. Everyone calm down. Clear the auditorium in an orderly fashion. Amanda, get security to— On it. Amanda was already coordinating on her phone. Elena's eyes found Marcus. He was still on the stage floor, his shoulders screaming where he'd absorbed their combined impact. Glass scattered around him. Blood ran from a cut on his arm where a shard had caught him. "You're bleeding," Elena said. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." She moved toward him, but Amanda intercepted her gently. "We need to get you to a secure location until security sweeps the building. Please, Elena." For a moment, Marcus thought Elena would refuse, but she let Amanda guide her toward the exit, looking back at him one last time. Her expression was something he'd never seen before. Shock. Gratitude. Something deeper that made his breath catch. Then she was gone. Security personnel surrounded Marcus, asking questions he barely heard. His mind kept replaying those seconds on a loop. The weight of Elena in his arms, the terror in her eyes, the absolute certainty that if he'd been 1 second slower, she would be dead. And somewhere in the chaos, Marcus realized that invisible was no longer an option. He'd thrown himself into the spotlight to save her. Nothing between them would ever be the same. The security office became command central within minutes of the auditorium evacuation. Marcus sat in a hard plastic chair while a paramedic cleaned the gash on his forearm. The sting of antiseptic barely registered against the adrenaline still flooding his system. Guards spoke in clipped tones into radios coordinating a building-wide lockdown while reviewing security footage on a wall of monitors. "You're lucky," the paramedic said, applying butterfly bandages. "Another inch, and this would have needed stitches." Marcus didn't feel lucky. He felt like his entire body was vibrating at a frequency just below visible. "Mr. Cole." The head of security, a former detective named Marcus Webb, pulled up a chair. His expression was grave. "Walk me through what happened. Start with why you were checking the auditorium in the first place." Marcus explained everything. The morning briefing, his decision to personally verify the systems, finding the frayed safety cable and loose mounting bolts, fixing them, documenting everything. He showed Webb the photos on his tablet, time-stamped from hours before the presentation. "You fixed it," Webb said, studying the images. "Secured everything properly. So how did the light still fall?" "Someone was up in the catwalk during the presentation." Marcus's voice was steady, despite his racing heart. "I saw movement, saw them working on something. They must have loosened it again, found another way to compromise the mount." Webb's jaw tightened. "Did you see a face? Any identifying features?" "No, just a silhouette, dark clothes, moving fast." "And you didn't report the initial sabotage because—" "I had no proof it was deliberate. Could have been negligence, poor maintenance. I documented everything, fixed the immediate danger, and planned to monitor it." Marcus met Webb's eyes. "I didn't expect someone to actively interfere during the event itself." Webb studied him for a long moment. "Your quick thinking saved Ms. Hart's life. I want to be clear about that. But this is now a criminal investigation. Attempted murder, possibly corporate espionage. You'll need to make a formal statement." "Whatever you need." The door opened and Amanda appeared. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Hart wants to see you, now." Webb nodded. "We'll continue this shortly. Don't leave the building." Marcus followed Amanda through corridors, now patrolled by additional security. Past employees gathered in worried clusters. The atmosphere had shifted, tension replacing the normal hum of corporate ambition. Amanda led him not to Elena's office, but to a small conference room he'd never entered before. Elena stood at the window, her back to the door, still in the blue suit. But her hair was down now, falling in waves across her shoulders. She didn't turn when they entered. "Leave us," she said quietly. Amanda hesitated. "Elena's security protocols suggest." "I'm safe with Marcus." Elena's voice was soft, but absolute. "Leave us." The door closed with a click that seemed too loud. Marcus stood just inside the room, uncertain whether to speak or wait. His heart hammered against his ribs. The cut on his arm throbbed in time with his pulse. "You tackled me." Elena's voice was strange, hollow. "In front of 300 people, you grabbed me and threw us both to the ground." "I'm sorry. I didn't have time to—" "Don't apologize." She turned and the expression on her face stopped his words. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her carefully maintained mask completely gone. "You saved my life. Do you understand that?" Her voice cracked. "If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't seen that light shifting, I would be dead right now." The rawness in her voice hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't the CEO, wasn't the Iron Lady who commanded boardrooms. This was a woman confronting her own mortality, stripped of every defense. "I saw the sabotage this afternoon," Marcus said, needing to fill the silence with something concrete. "The frayed cable, the loose bolts. I fixed it, but I should have reported it immediately. Should have insisted they cancel the presentation until you did exactly what you should have done." Elena crossed the room, stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see she was still trembling. "You identified a threat, neutralized it, stayed vigilant. When the danger evolved, you acted without hesitation." Her voice broke. "That's not something to apologize for. I'm just a maintenance tech." The words came out before he could stop them. "I fix broken systems. I'm not... You're the man who saved my life, twice now." Elena's eyes held his with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "Once from embarrassment and career damage when you could have exploited what you saw in my office, and today from actual death." Her voice was barely a whisper. "So don't tell me what you are or aren't, Marcus Cole. I know exactly what you are." The way she said his name rewired something fundamental in his chest. Marcus found himself taking a step closer, drawn by gravity he didn't understand. "What happened up there?" he said quietly. "On that stage. That wasn't about maintaining your image or protecting the company. That was about you. Just you." He held her gaze. "And I would do it again without thinking twice." Elena's breath caught. For a moment he thought she might say something that would change everything between them. But her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She looked away, composing herself piece by piece. "Security found evidence in the catwalk," she said, her voice steadier now. "Tools, cut cables. They're reviewing all footage from the building." She met his eyes again. "Whoever did this will be caught. Do you know why someone would target you like this?" A bitter smile crossed Elena's face. "I'm a young woman running a multi-billion-dollar company in an industry dominated by men who think they deserve what I have. I've made enemies acquiring competitors, refusing partnerships, choosing merit over politics." She paused. "The list of people who'd benefit from my death is longer than I'd like to admit." The casual way she said it, "people who'd benefit from my death," made Marcus's hands curl into fists. That's not normal. That's not acceptable. It's reality. Elena moved back toward the window, putting distance between them. "And now I have to decide how to handle it. Cancel the product launch, increase security, show weakness to everyone watching for me to fail." "You show strength by staying alive," Marcus said. "Everything else is secondary." She looked at him, something that might have been wonder in her expression. "You really believe that I know what it's like to have someone depending on you? To know that your choices, your survival determines their entire world?" Marcus thought of Lily. "You have thousands of employees whose livelihoods depend on this company. You owe it to them to protect yourself." "Is that the only reason?" Elena asked softly. "The employees?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications Marcus wasn't ready to examine. Before he could answer, the door opened. Webb entered with 2 other security personnel. "Ms. Hart, we have a situation." His face was grim. "We've identified the individual in the catwalk." Elena's spine straightened, authority flooding back into her posture. "Who?" "His name is Daniel Porter. He's been with building maintenance for 8 months. Background check was clean. References verified." Webb pulled up an image on his tablet. A man in dark maintenance coveralls, his face clearly visible on the security footage. "But we just discovered his employment application used a false social security number. Someone planted him here." "Planted him," Elena repeated. "Someone spent 8 months positioning an operative inside my building just to... That's our assessment. We're searching his locker and contacting authorities now." Webb's expression darkened. "But there's more." He pulled up another image, a screenshot of an email from an anonymous account. This was sent to 3 business journalists 40 minutes ago, before the incident. Marcus read the text over Elena's shoulder. Claims that Hart Technologies had been falsifying financial records, inflating revenue numbers, deceiving investors. The timing suggests whoever sent it expected you to be in no position to defend yourself, Webb said. The full picture clicked into place. This wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was coordinated destruction. Kill Elena, release damaging accusations, tank the company's value all at once. The allegations are false, Elena said flatly. Our books are audited quarterly by independent firms, but proving that will take time, and the accusation alone will damage investor confidence. Not if you're standing in front of cameras tomorrow morning very much alive with security footage showing an attempted murder that coincides with fraudulent allegations. Webb leaned forward. That's not whistleblowing. That's a conspiracy. We need to find Porter before he disappears, Elena said. And I want to know who hired him. Someone with resources. Someone who understands this company well enough to coordinate this kind of attack. We're on it. Webb nodded. In the meantime, I'm assigning personal security. You don't go anywhere without protection until... No. Elena's voice cut like steel. I'm not hiding behind bodyguards like I'm afraid. We handle this intelligently, but I won't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me cower. Webb looked like he wanted to argue, but knew better. At minimum, you need someone watching your immediate environment. Someone you trust. Elena's eyes found Marcus. Something passed between them. A silent conversation that excluded everyone else. Marcus stays close, she said. He's already proven he can identify threats I can't see. He works on the executive floor anyway. Nothing changes visibly. But he's there. Ms. Hart, with respect, Mr. Cole is maintenance staff. He's not trained for... Mr. Cole saved my life while your security personnel were watching cameras and patrolling hallways. Elena's tone left no room for argument. I trust his instincts. He stays. Webb nodded reluctantly. We'll need to brief him on protocols. Provide communication equipment. Fine. Do it tonight. I want this handled before morning. Elena turned to Marcus, her expression unreadable. Unless you have objections to expanding your responsibilities. Marcus thought about what he was being asked. Thought about Lily. About the risk of putting himself between Elena and whoever wanted her dead. About walking away. Choosing safety. Protecting the fragile stability they'd finally achieved. But when he looked at Elena, really looked at her, he saw the vulnerability she was hiding behind steel and authority. Saw someone who'd built walls so high she couldn't see over them anymore. Someone who trusted so few people that asking him to stay close was an act of profound faith. No objections, he said. Whatever you need. The relief that flashed across Elena's face was brief. But it had been there. Real and raw. Before she locked it away again. The next 3 hours blurred together. Security briefings, equipment distribution, coordination with law enforcement. Marcus was fitted with a discreet earpiece that connected him to the security network. Shown emergency protocols. Given access codes for systems he'd never imagined needing. Webb ran him through threat assessment basics, what to watch for how to respond. Your job isn't to engage threats, Webb emphasized. It's to get Ms. Hart to safety and alert us. You see something suspicious, you call it in. Understand? Understood. Though privately, Marcus wondered what he'd actually do if someone threatened Elena in his presence. The tackle on stage had been pure instinct. He suspected his instincts wouldn't wait for security protocols. It was nearly 11:30 p.m. when he finally made it home. Mrs. Chen had put Lily to bed hours ago. A note on the counter mentioned the math homework Lily had struggled with and the chicken soup warming in the fridge. Marcus stood in his daughter's doorway watching her sleep. She clutched that worn, stuffed rabbit against her chest, breathing softly. completely unaware of what had happened today. He'd crossed so many lines, professional boundaries, class divisions, the careful distance he'd maintained between himself and Elena's world. Tomorrow he'd cross more, standing close to her, not as invisible maintenance staff, but as something else entirely. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for today, for everything. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be complicated. E." Marcus stared at those words until his eyes blurred. She had his personal number, had reached out after hours, had thanked him like a person rather than an employee. He typed back carefully. "You're welcome. See you at 7. Her response came immediately. 6:30. "We have work to do." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. Of course she did. He looked at Lily one more time, made a silent promise to keep coming home to her, no matter what. Then he went to bed. But he didn't sleep. Instead, he lay in the darkness, listening to his daughter breathe, knowing that somewhere across the city, Elena Hart was doing the same thing. Both of them alone with their fear. Both of them pretending to be stronger than they felt. Both of them waiting for whatever came next. The next morning arrived with news that Daniel Porter had been apprehended trying to board a flight to Mexico. His apartment yielded a burner phone with encrypted messages coordinating the attack, along with $50,000 in cash. He was in custody not talking, but law enforcement was confident they could trace the money. Marcus arrived at the executive floor at 6:15 to find it already buzzing with activity. Security personnel everywhere, tension thick enough to choke on. Amanda intercepted him immediately. "Ms. Hart is in her office. She asked for you directly." Amanda's expression was complex, professional courtesy mixed with something that might have been concern. "Whatever's happening between you two," she said quietly, "be careful. She's under enormous pressure right now. She makes decisions based on control and strategy. Don't mistake proximity for something it isn't." The warning was clear, and probably wise. Marcus nodded and knocked on Elena's door. "Come in." She sat behind her desk, already dressed for battle in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back severely, but her eyes were softer when she looked at him, carrying memories of yesterday's vulnerability. "How's your arm?" she asked. "Fine, barely feel it." Marcus closed the door behind him. "You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't." Elena gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I spent the night reviewing everyone who might have orchestrated this. Business rivals, disgruntled former employees, board members who opposed my leadership." She paused. "The list is extensive and depressing." "Webb will find the connection," Marcus said, sitting. "The money trail always leads somewhere." "That's not what worries me." Elena leaned back, studying him. "What worries me is that I've built my entire life around not needing anyone. Control, independence, self-reliance. And yesterday," her voice caught. "Yesterday, I needed you. Absolutely. Completely needed you to save my life. That's not a position I'm comfortable occupying." The honesty stunned him. "Needing someone in a crisis doesn't make you weak," Marcus said carefully. "It makes you human." "I'm not sure I'm allowed to be human. Not in this position." Elena's fingers drummed against her desk. "Weakness is blood in the water. Every competitor, every skeptical board member, every journalist looking for a story, they're all waiting for me to prove I don't belong here. Then prove them wrong. Show up today stronger than yesterday. Face the cameras. Address the allegations. Demonstrate that whoever tried to kill you failed spectacularly." Marcus leaned forward. "That's not weakness. That's power." Elena's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You make it sound simple." "I didn't say it was simple. I said it was necessary." "You asked me yesterday what I am to you." Elena's eyes held his. "You want the truth." Marcus waited. "You're the person who changed my daughter's life by giving me a chance I didn't deserve. You're the woman who works 18-hour days to protect thousands of employees she'll never meet. His voice dropped. And you're someone who shouldn't have to face death threats and character assassination alone. The silence that followed felt alive, charged with everything they weren't saying. Elena's eyes searched his face like she was looking for proof he meant it, that this wasn't performance or manipulation. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. How to let someone be close without wondering what they want from me. I don't want anything except for you to be safe. Marcus held her gaze. That's it. That's all of it. That might be the most valuable thing anyone's ever offered me. Her intercom buzzed before either of them could say more. Ms. Hart, the investigators from the police department are here. Conference room A. Elena's expression shifted, the CEO mask sliding back into place. Send them in. We'll be there in 2 minutes. She stood straightening her jacket. Stay close today, she said quietly. I need to know you're there. I'm not going anywhere. Conference room A was the largest on the executive floor. Detective Morrison, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that had seen too many crimes, stood beside Webb and 2 other investigators. Ms. Hart, Morrison said as they entered, thank you for meeting on short notice. The evidence we've uncovered requires immediate action. Show me. Elena took her seat at the head of the table. Marcus positioned himself near the wall, close enough to intervene if necessary, but outside the direct circle of conversation. Morrison pulled up images on the main screen. Phone records, financial transactions, email metadata. Daniel Porter received his instructions through an encrypted messaging app. We traced the account through payment records. The person who hired him made 3 transfers totaling $50,000 over the past 6 months. Who? Elena's voice was flat. Morrison glanced at Webb. The money came from an offshore account. The setup was sophisticated, but forensic accounting found the source. She paused. The account was funded by liquidating stock options belonging to Derek Simmons, your chief technology officer. The name landed like a grenade. Marcus saw Elena's expression freeze, shock warring with disbelief. Derek Simmons had been with Hart Technologies for 9 years, had worked directly with Elena's father, was responsible for the technological innovations that had made the company's recent expansion possible. That's not possible. Elena's voice was barely audible. He's been loyal to this company since before I took over. He supported every initiative, worked 18-hour days on the new platform. Why would he? We believe he's working with outside interests, Morrison interrupted. The financial trail shows he's in significant debt, gambling losses over the past 2 years. Someone approached him, offered to clear his debts in exchange for cooperation. Cooperation? Elena repeated. The plan was to eliminate you, install more cooperative leadership. Derek would maintain his position while feeding information to competitors. Elena sat back, her face pale. Derek came to my father's funeral, told me he believed in my vision for the company. He's sat in meetings with me almost daily for 2 years, and all that time he was planning to kill you, Webb finished grimly. We've been watching him since we identified the connection an hour ago. He's in his office right now, acting like everything is normal. We need your authorization to arrest him, Morrison said. Not yet. Morrison frowned. Ms. Hart, he's a flight risk. If he suspects we're onto him, he doesn't suspect. If he did, he'd already be gone. Elena's mind was clearly racing, strategizing even through the shock. Derek is smart, careful. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. Which means there's more we don't know. More people involved. More evidence to gather. If we arrest him now, we lose the chance to see the full picture. You want to use him, Morrison said. I want to finish this. Not just stop one attack, but dismantle the entire conspiracy. Elena's voice hardened. Derek had help. Someone on the outside funding this, coordinating it. I want them too. Webb leaned forward. That's dangerous, Ms. Hart. Every day Derek walks free is another day he could try something else. Not if he thinks he's still hidden. Not if we feed him information that makes him believe his plan is still viable. Marcus watched her work, saw the strategic mind that had built an empire operating at full capacity. But he also saw the cost. The way her hands trembled slightly before she clasped them together. The tension in her jaw that spoke of betrayal cutting deep. "What do you propose?" Morrison asked. "We tell Derek that the investigation into Porter is stalling, that the money trail went cold at the offshore account, that I'm focused on external threats, increasing public security, leaving internal systems vulnerable." Elena's voice gained strength. "We give him rope to hang himself with, and we watch everything he does, everyone he contacts." "That puts you at significant risk," Morrison said carefully. "If he feels threatened, if he suspects at all, I'll have protection." Elena's eyes flicked to Marcus. "And I'll be careful, but I won't let whoever orchestrated this walk away because we moved too fast." Morrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 48 hours. We'll monitor Derek around the clock, track every communication, every movement. But if he makes any move that suggests immediate danger, we shut it down." Agreed. The meeting continued for another hour, establishing surveillance protocols, communication channels. When the investigators finally left, Elena remained seated at the conference table, staring at her clasped hands. Marcus waited. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You don't have to put yourself at risk to catch everyone involved. Let the police handle it. The police will arrest Derek and be satisfied with closing the case." Elena didn't look up. "But the person who funded this, who approached Derek in the first place, they'll disappear. Find someone else to target me. And I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next attack will come. Better than being dead." "Is it?" Elena finally looked at him. Her eyes were haunted. "I've built my entire existence around control, around knowing the variables, managing the risks, staying 3 steps ahead of everyone trying to take what I've built. If I let fear dictate my choices now, I lose the only thing that's kept me standing all these years. You're allowed to be afraid. You're allowed to choose safety over—" "This isn't vengeance." Her voice cracked. "It's survival. And maybe—" She stopped. Started again. "Maybe I'm tired of surviving alone. Maybe that's why I'm asking you to stay close. Because for the first time in longer than I can remember, I don't want to face this by myself." The confession settled between them, vulnerable and raw. Marcus moved slowly, giving her time to pull away. He covered her hand with his. Her skin was cold, trembling, and when his warmth touched hers, she inhaled sharply. "You're not alone," he said. "Not in this, not anymore." Elena turned her hand over, threading her fingers through his. They sat there in the empty conference room, holding on to each other like lifelines in a storm. The next 48 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. He stayed within 10 feet of Elena at all times, shadowing her through meetings and video conferences, standing outside her office when she needed privacy, eating meals he barely tasted while watching everyone who came near her. Derek Simmons appeared at staff meetings looking concerned and supportive, asking Elena how she was handling the stress, offering to take on additional responsibilities. Marcus watched him perform empathy and concern. Every word felt like acid on his skin. This man had tried to kill Elena, had betrayed everything she'd built, and now he smiled and nodded while planning his next move. "How are you holding up?" Derek asked Elena after a product development meeting. "I'm fine, Derek. Thank you for asking." Elena's performance was flawless. "Your work on the new interface is excellent. Exactly what we need for launch." "Just doing my job." Derek's smile was warm, practiced. "We all want to see you succeed." The lie was so smooth that Marcus had to fight the urge to grab Derek by his expensive collar and throw him against the nearest wall. But Elena's hand touched his arm briefly as she passed, a silent reminder to stay calm. Stay focused. Surveillance teams reported that Derek was making encrypted calls to an unknown number, always from locations outside the building where he thought he had privacy. The technical team was working to break the encryption, but it was sophisticated, suggesting whoever Derek reported to had significant resources. On the second night around 11:00 p.m., Marcus was doing a final security sweep of the executive floor when his earpiece crackled to life. "We've got movement." Webb's voice was urgent. "Derek just entered the building through the parking garage. He's not supposed to be here." Marcus's heart rate spiked. "Where's Ms. Hart?" "Still in her office. We've got eyes on her, but Derek's heading for the executive floor now." Webb's voice tightened. "Get to her." Marcus ran. His boots pounded against marble as he raced down the corridor. Behind him he heard elevator doors opening, footsteps echoing through the empty building. He burst into Elena's wing to find her at her desk. Paperwork spread around her, completely unaware. "We need to go," Marcus said urgently. "Now." Elena looked up, instantly reading the tension in his voice. "What's—" "Derek, in the building, coming up. Webb's mobilizing security, but—" The lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the executive floor. Emergency lighting failed to activate. Marcus heard Elena's sharp intake of breath, heard movement in the hallway outside. Every instinct screamed danger. "Stay behind me," he whispered, pulling Elena away from her desk. His eyes were adjusting to the darkness, shapes emerging from shadow. "He's cutting power." Elena breathed against his shoulder. "Disabling security systems." "Where's your panic button?" "Desk drawer." "But if the power's out—" Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. Marcus positioned himself between Elena and the door. His hands were empty, his mind racing through options. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't trained for this, but he'd meant what he said about protecting her. "Elena," Derek's voice called from the darkness. Friendly, calm. "Are you still here?" The power went out. "I came to make sure you were okay." The performance was chilling in its normalcy. Marcus felt Elena tense against his back. "I'm fine, Derek," she called back, her voice steady despite everything. "Just finishing some work. The emergency lighting should kick in any moment." "Actually, it won't." Derek appeared in the doorway, backlit by exit signs in the hallway beyond. Marcus couldn't see his face clearly, but he could see the gun in Derek's hand, dark and deadly. "I made sure of that, had months to prepare, to understand every system in this building." Derek stepped into the office. "You made it easy, really, trusting me with so much access." "Derek, what are you doing?" Elena's voice carried just the right note of confusion, still playing her part. "What I should have done 2 years ago when they first approached me." Derek moved closer. "You were never supposed to run this company, Elena. Your father knew it. The board knew it. Everyone knew except you, so stubborn, so convinced you could prove everyone wrong." His voice turned bitter. "And you did, which made everything so much more complicated." "Who approached you?" Elena asked. Marcus heard the calculation in her voice. Keep him talking. Buy time for security to arrive. People who understand that innovation shouldn't be controlled by legacy and nepotism. People who could actually use hard technologies to change the industry instead of protecting market share and shareholder profits. Derek moved closer. Marcus shifted to maintain his position between them. "They offered me a real future. Chief Technology Officer of a combined entity that would dominate the market. All I had to do was remove the obstacle." "You mean kill me?" Elena said flatly. "Remove." Derek repeated the word like it tasted good. "The stage light was supposed to be clean. Tragic accident. Company in mourning. Smooth transition to new leadership." His voice hardened. "But you had to have him." The gun gestured toward Marcus. Your watchdog, your maintenance hero, ruined everything. So now we do this the hard way. Security is already coming, Marcus said. His voice was steady despite his racing heart. Building's on lockdown. You won't make it out. I don't need to make it out. Derek's tone was almost conversational. I just need her dead. They'll extract me after. New identity, new life. But only if I finish the job. The gun rose, pointing directly at Elena. Marcus saw Derek's finger tighten on the trigger. He didn't think, didn't calculate odds or consider consequences. He lunged sideways, slamming into Derek with all his weight, driving them both into the wall beside the door. The gun discharged, deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. The muzzle flash illuminated the office in stark white light. Marcus felt the bullet pass so close to his head the air pressure made his ear ring, but he was already moving, grabbing for Derek's wrist, trying to control the weapon. They crashed into furniture, struggled in near darkness. Derek was stronger than he looked, desperate enough to fight with everything he had. Run, Marcus shouted at Elena. Get out. But Elena didn't run. He caught a glimpse of her moving in his peripheral vision. Heard the crash of something heavy. Her desk lamp connected with Derek's skull. The CTO staggered, his grip on the gun loosening. Marcus wrenched it away, sending it skittering across the floor into darkness. Derek recovered faster than expected, drove an elbow into Marcus's ribs that forced the air from his lungs. They went down together, hit the floor hard, and then hands closed around Marcus's throat, squeezing with methodical pressure. Should have stayed invisible. Derek's face was inches away, his voice a hiss. Should have just fixed the lights and disappeared. But you had to play hero, had to make yourself important to her. His fingers dug deeper. Now you die with her. Marcus's vision started to gray at the edges, his lungs screaming for air. He clawed at Derek's hands, trying to break the grip, but his strength was fading fast. Through the gathering darkness, he saw Elena searching frantically for something, anything she could use. Then light flooded the office, blinding after so much darkness. Voices shouted from multiple directions. The pressure on Marcus's throat released abruptly as security guards swarmed the room, pulling Derek away, forcing him to the ground. Marcus gasped for air, his throat raw, his vision clearing slowly. Strong hands helped him sit up. And suddenly, Elena was there, kneeling beside him, her hands framing his face with desperate gentleness. Marcus. Her voice broke on his name. Can you hear me? Are you hurt? He tried to speak, coughed instead, his throat burning. Elena's eyes were wide with fear he'd never seen there before, tears tracking down her cheeks. She was shaking. I'm okay, he managed, his voice barely a whisper. Are you... Did he... I'm fine. You kept yourself between us. Her thumb brushed his cheek. Only then did Marcus realize he was bleeding from somewhere. You threw yourself at a gun, you impossible, brave, stupid man. You could have died. Couldn't let him hurt you. Around them, security was securing Derek, reading him his rights, coordinating with police teams flooding into the building. Detective Morrison appeared in the doorway. We got it all on audio, she said grimly. His confession. The mention of extraction and new identity, that plus the attempted murder will put him away for life, and we're already working on identifying his contacts. Good, Elena said, but her attention never left Marcus. Get him out of here. Get all of them out. Webb started to protest. Ms. Hart, we need statements. Medical evaluation. Later. Elena's voice carried absolute authority despite the tears still wet on her face. Everyone out, now. They went, reluctantly. Derek was dragged away, shouting threats and justifications that faded as they hauled him toward the elevators. Then the door closed, and Marcus and Elena were alone, surrounded by overturned furniture and evidence of violence, both of them breathing hard. You saved my life, Elena said quietly. Again. That's becoming a habit. Marcus tried to joke, but his voice was too rough, too raw. Don't. Elena's hands were still on his face, holding him like she was afraid he'd disappear. Don't make light of this. You threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. You could have died. But I didn't. We didn't. We're both still here. Because of you. The words came out fierce, almost angry. Because you keep choosing to stand between me and people trying to destroy me. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to... She stopped, her voice breaking completely. And Marcus saw the moment when every wall she'd built came crashing down. The Iron Lady dissolved, leaving only Elena Hart. Terrified, grateful, completely undone by the weight of everything they'd survived together. I see you too, she whispered. I see you, Marcus Cole. And I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between you walking in on me half-dressed and you tackling a man with a gun, I stopped being able to imagine facing any of this without you. Marcus's breath caught. They were still on the floor of her office, both of them bruised and bleeding, surrounded by chaos, and she was looking at him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to kill her twice. I'm not going anywhere, he said, echoing his promise from what felt like lifetimes ago. Not now, not ever, if you'll let me stay. I don't deserve you. That's not your choice to make. Marcus reached up, touched her face, wiped away a tear with his thumb. I'm already here, already yours, if you want me. The silence felt endless, heavy with possibility and fear, and the bridge they were both standing on deciding whether to cross or retreat to safer ground. Then Elena leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle or uncertain. It was desperate, fierce, tasting of salt from her tears and copper from his split lip. Marcus kissed her back with everything he had. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer. She came willingly, pressing against him like she needed the contact to believe he was real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. This is complicated, she whispered. I know. People will talk. The board, the employees. Everyone will have opinions about the CEO and the maintenance tech. I know that too. And I'm still figuring out how to be human instead of just a position and a legacy. I've got time. Marcus pulled back just enough to look at her. As much as you need. Elena searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Whatever she saw there made her eyes fill with tears again. But this time she was smiling. You really mean that? Every word. Marcus brushed hair back from her face. You and me against the corporate assassins. We make a pretty good team. Elena laughed. The sound watery but genuine, and kissed him again. Softer this time. Slower. Like they had all the time in the world, instead of security teams waiting outside, and statements to give, and an empire that still needed protecting. But for this moment in the darkness of her office, with emergency lights finally flickering to life, they were just two people who'd survived impossible odds, and found something neither of them had been looking for: each other. The paramedics arrived 15 minutes later, insisting on examining both of them despite Elena's protests that she was fine. Marcus sat still while they checked the bruising around his throat, cleaned the cut on his cheekbone, and asked questions about dizziness and breathing that he answered automatically. His mind was still caught on the feeling of Elena's lips against his. She stood nearby, refusing to leave, even when the paramedics suggested she should sit down. Her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something precious and fragile. Their eyes kept meeting across the small space. Conversations happening in silence that neither of them was ready to voice aloud. You're lucky, the paramedic said, shining a light in Marcus's eyes. Another few seconds of pressure and we'd be talking about serious damage. Your throat's going to be sore for a week and those bruises will look worse before they look better. I'll survive. That seems to be your specialty, Elena said quietly. Detective Morrison returned once the medical team finished. Derek Simmons is in custody and talking. Not because he wants to, but because we've got him on attempted murder with multiple witnesses and audio recording. His lawyer is already trying to negotiate a deal." "What kind of deal?" Elena's voice hardened back into the CEO tone that commanded boardrooms. "Information about his co-conspirators in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's claiming he was coerced, that the people who approached him threatened his family if he didn't cooperate." Morrison's skepticism was evident. "We're verifying his claims, but preliminary investigation suggests he's lying. His gambling debts were real. His financial desperation was real. And the offshore accounts show payments that look like incentives, not threats." "Who was paying him?" "That's where it gets interesting." Morrison pulled up something on her tablet. "Nexus Dynamics. One of your competitors, or rather, they were your competitors until you acquired them 18 months ago." Elena's expression went cold. "The executive team from Nexus was integrated into our structure. Some of them are still here." "Exactly. We believe this was a revenge play, coordinated by former Nexus leadership who lost their positions after the acquisition. They recruited Derek, funded the operation, and planned to install their own people once you were eliminated. Then they'd orchestrate a hostile takeover, reclaim what they considered theirs." "Names," Elena said. "I want names." Morrison listed 3 executives, all of whom Marcus vaguely recognized from morning briefings. Senior vice presidents who'd seemed cooperative and professional, who'd attended meetings and contributed to projects while secretly planning murder. "They're being arrested as we speak," Morrison said, along with several others involved in the financial side. "By morning, this will be the lead story on every business network. Attempted assassination, corporate conspiracy, the works." Elena closed her eyes briefly. Marcus saw the weight settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about managing the fallout, controlling the narrative, protecting the company and its thousands of employees from the scandal that was about to engulf them. "I need to make a statement," she said, "before the story breaks on its own terms. We control this, or it controls us." "At midnight?" Morrison asked. "The financial markets open in Asia in 3 hours. If this breaks without context, without my voice framing it, our stock price will crater. Competitors will circle like sharks." Elena was already moving her strategic mind, overriding exhaustion and trauma. "I need Amanda, the communications team, legal. We draft a statement, release it to major outlets with an embargo until 6 a.m. Eastern, and I do a live interview at 7. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "you just survived a murder attempt. You're allowed to rest." She looked at him, and for a moment her mask slipped enough that he saw the bone-deep weariness underneath. "If I rest, I think about how close I came to dying. How Derek sat across from me in meetings for 2 years planning to kill me. How I trusted people who wanted me dead." Her voice wavered. "I can't afford to think about that yet. So I work." Marcus understood. He'd done the same thing after Melissa left, burying himself in survival and single parenthood because stopping meant drowning in fear and abandonment. But understanding didn't mean he had to let Elena destroy herself. "Then I'm staying with you," he said. "You work, I'm there, no arguments." Something softened in Elena's expression. "You should go home. Lily needs you." "Mrs. Chen is with Lily. What I need is to know you're safe." Marcus stood, ignoring the protest from his bruised ribs. "You said yourself you don't want to face this alone anymore, so don't." The look Elena gave him was complex. Gratitude and vulnerability and something deeper that neither of them had time to examine. But she nodded. The next 4 hours were a blur of activity. Amanda arrived within 20 minutes, her professional composure intact despite being called in at midnight. The communications team assembled. Lawyers joined via video conference. They crafted a statement that walked the razor's edge between transparency and damage control. Marcus stayed in the background, watching Elena command the room with the same authority she'd shown in every crisis. But now he could see the cost. The way her hands shook slightly when she thought no one was looking, the tightness around her eyes that spoke of pain she wouldn't acknowledge. Around 3 a.m., during a brief pause while the lawyers reviewed language, Elena caught his eye and gestured toward her private office. He followed, closing the door on the controlled chaos outside. "I can't do this," she said the moment they were alone, her voice breaking. Marcus moved to her immediately. "Yes, you can. You've been doing it for hours." "I mean," she gestured between them, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I mean this. Whatever happened between us earlier, whatever we said, I can't think about it right now. Can't process what it means or what I want or how to fit something personal into a life that's about to become a media circus." The words hurt, but Marcus understood them. "Okay." Elena looked at him like she'd expected an argument. "You need time," he said gently. "Space to handle the crisis without worrying about us. I get it. I'm not going anywhere, Elena. When you're ready to think about this, I'll be here." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Not easy, but simple." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. Took her hand. "I care about you. That doesn't change, because you need to focus on your company right now. Do what you need to do. I'll wait." Elena's fingers tightened around his. What if waiting means weeks, months? What if by the time I have space to breathe, you've realized that a single father with a 6-year-old daughter doesn't need the complications that come with me? Then I guess you don't know me as well as I thought. Marcus met her eyes. "Because complications don't scare me. Losing you before we even have a chance to see what this could be that terrifies me." She kissed him then, desperate and brief, like she was trying to memorize the feeling before duty pulled her away. When they broke apart, she was crying silently. "I need you to take care of yourself," she whispered. "Go home after this. Be with Lily. Let me handle the corporate nightmare without worrying that you're exhausting yourself trying to protect me from everything." "Elena, please." Her voice broke completely. "Please, Marcus. I need to know you're safe and resting. That's how you help me right now." He wanted to argue, wanted to insist on staying, but he saw the genuine need in her eyes. She was trying to protect him the only way she knew how, by creating distance before the media storm destroyed everything in its path. "Okay," he said finally. "But we're not done. This conversation, us, we're not done." "We're not done," Elena agreed. She touched his bruised throat gently, her expression anguished. "I'm sorry he hurt you. I'd take 1,000 bruises if it meant keeping you alive." She made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "That's exactly the kind of thing that makes this impossible to walk away from, even temporarily." They stood there for another moment, holding each other in the quiet of her office while the world waited outside. Then duty called, and they separated, rebuilding their professional distance like armor against the chaos to come. Marcus left Hart Tower at 4:30 a.m. The city was still dark, the streets empty except for delivery trucks and insomniacs. He rode the bus home in a daze, watching dawn break over Chicago's skyline in shades of pink and gold that seemed impossibly beautiful after the violence of the night. Mrs. Chen was asleep on his couch when he arrived. He woke her gently, thanked her profusely, promised to explain everything later. She looked at the bruises on his throat with worried eyes, but didn't ask questions. Lily was sprawled across her narrow bed, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit. Peaceful, completely unaware that her father had nearly died. Marcus stood in her doorway and watched her breathe. He'd built his entire life around keeping this little girl safe and loved. And somehow, impossibly, he'd found room in that life for Elena Hart, a woman who needed protection and connection just as desperately as Lily did, even if she'd spent years pretending otherwise. He showered carefully, avoiding the bruises, and fell into bed as sunlight streamed through his window. He slept fitfully. Dreams full of falling lights and gunshots, and Elena's voice saying his name like a prayer. He woke to Lily bouncing on his bed at 8 a.m., her dark hair wild around her face. "Daddy, you're home. Mrs. Chen said you had to work really late." She stopped bouncing, her eyes going wide. "What happened to your face?" Marcus sat up carefully, every muscle protesting. "I had an accident at work. But I'm okay, sweet girl. Just a little banged up." "Did you fall?" Lily touched his cheek with gentle fingers. "Something like that." He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "But I'm fine now, and I'm home. That's what matters." They made breakfast together, slightly burnt pancakes and orange juice, morning cartoons playing in the background. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with messages he ignored, letting the world outside wait while he focused on this small, perfect moment of normalcy. Around 10 a.m., his phone rang with Amanda's number. "Mr. Cole, I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Hart." Amanda's voice was professional but warm. "She wanted you to know that her statement has been released and the interview went well. The board is meeting this afternoon to address the situation formally." "How is she?" A pause. "Functioning, which is about all any of us can say right now." Amanda's voice softened. "She asked me to tell you specifically that security has been enhanced across all facilities, that Derek and his co-conspirators are in custody, and that you should take the next few days off to recover." "I don't need—" "It's not a request, Mr. Cole. It's a direct order from Ms. Hart. She's quite insistent." Another pause. "Between you and me, she needs to know you're safe and resting. It's the only thing keeping her focused right now." Marcus closed his eyes, understanding the subtext. Elena was using his safety as a focal point, something concrete to hold on to when everything else was chaos. "Tell her I'm taking care of myself," he said quietly, "and that I'll be here when she needs me." "I will. And Mr. Cole, thank you for everything you've done for her." The call ended. The next 3 days were surreal. The story dominated every news cycle. Attempted assassination, corporate conspiracy, the brilliant young CEO who'd survived multiple attempts on her life. Elena's face was everywhere, giving interviews addressing shareholders, projecting strength and control, while the company's stock price actually rose on the narrative of her resilience. Marcus watched from home, healing slowly, fielding calls from coworkers who wanted details he wouldn't share. Webb called once to say the investigation was expanding, that the full scope of the conspiracy involved more people than they'd initially suspected, but that Elena was safe now with enhanced security and the threat neutralized. She didn't call, didn't text, and Marcus understood that too. She was in crisis management mode, every moment scheduled and strategic. No room for personal complications. But understanding didn't stop him from checking his phone obsessively, hoping for some small sign that she was thinking about him. On the 4th day, Mrs. Chen knocked on his door with a package, small, wrapped in plain brown paper. His name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a book, a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, and a note card. "Lily mentioned in passing that you read to her every night, but your copy of this got damaged in a move. Found this at a bookstore near my apartment and thought of you both. Thank you for understanding why I need space right now. It doesn't mean I've forgotten what you said, or what I said, or what happened between us. Just that I need to build something stable before I can let myself want something personal. I hope that makes sense. I hope you'll wait a little longer." Marcus sat on his couch holding the book, reading the note 3 times. She'd remembered a throwaway comment about a children's book, had gone out of her way to replace it, was asking him to wait while she rebuilt her world.